pastoral ministry, I had the pleasure and challenge of working under two different senior pastors who were both short-timers. They were on their way out the door to retirement, which turned out to be the best thing in the world because you won't know which one of them I'm going to tell this story about. The senior pastor said to me, "You're spending your time wrong. You need to spend less time at more things. You go to some church activities and you stay the entire time, but you don't go to all the church activities. So people complain when you're at this thing, but not their thing." And I said, if I went to all of the church activities and stayed the whole time, I would have no time to get my other work done, which was all of the pastoral care, all the funerals, all the weddings, and a sermon every Sunday. And he said, sure. But the problem is the things you do go to, you stay the whole time. You're not going to be able to do that when you're a solo pastor. There's not enough of you to go around. Sometimes I even see you set up and clean up. Pastors do not have time for that. You just need to stop by everything, but don't stay. Now, my parsonage that the church gave me was 20 minutes away from the church, which meant if I just wanted to stop by the one meeting that happened at 7 o'clock, I had to drive 40-minute round trip. I'm not going to drive 40 minutes to go, hi. You know, I'm going to stay. Also, when I stayed at the women's group or the children's ministry planning session or the social event, that's where I gathered all the information to know how things were going, to know how people were doing and what was going on in their lives. So I listened to him and I mixed up a little bit more what I went to, but I kept going only to some things and staying because that's how you get to know the people. That's how you see what's going on with the church, which is the people, right? But I also watched this senior pastor more closely to see how he did what he did that seemed to give him all the time in the world. I've never met a more relaxed pastor than this guy. He would show up at absolutely everything. He would walk through, wave and greet, grab a cookie, take a bite, say, good cookie, eat the rest of the cookie, and walk out. That's what he did at every meeting, at every event. And then one of the parishioners said to me, have you noticed how much weight he's gained since he became our pastor? I swear he only comes to the meetings for the cookies. And then they said, I'm glad you're not too busy for us. And that made me feel good because early on I needed people to validate how I pastored because I was so burned out from spending so much time with them. So it turned out that senior pastor was kind of right. I don't always have time as a solo pastor to be at everything, and I certainly don't have time to be at the entire length of everything we do and do my other work. Our church is actually bigger than that church was with 2 associates. I have to pick and choose what I do. But you know, I sometimes also do the drive by and wave. I just try not to grab a cookie. I learned from his actions. So there's a modern concept related to this that really captured my imagination the first time I saw it online. It's this, TL semicolon DR, which stands for too long, didn't read. Too long, didn't read. So sometimes people will put it at the end of a long social media post or article. I'm going to write out the whole thing, I think, and then I'm going to give you the TLDR, just a summary of the points. But then sometimes people will post it in their comments on something that's really thoughtful. They'll read the first couple of lines of whatever the long thing is, and then they'll comment TLDR, and then give their unsolicited advice on the thing they don't understand because they didn't read, because it was too long. But here's my thoughts on the thing I didn't read, which is kind of what that pastor was doing. He had so much experience in churches that he just led the change he thought they needed. Looked at us, wrote a prescription, changed everything to that. And he didn't really invest in knowing the people because he knew he was on his way out. Why get hooked on him? Why know anything about him? The congregation stories were too long. He didn't read. That was fine for his job. But my job with them and my pastoral identity required a different rhythm of being with the people who were the church. I stayed longer. So sometimes when I read the story of the prodigal son, I see the point Jesus was making about the son wandering off, blowing his inheritance, finding this great welcome at home from his father, who sees him on the horizon and calls for the servant to bring the best road and kill the fatted calf and throw a celebration. Now, you know, fatted calf is on the menu for the biblical barbecue. We're having August 17th. That means we're having hamburgers. I see, that's fatted calf. I see the love and acceptance the father shows the son in the story, and the love and acceptance God has when any of God's wayward children decide to humble themselves and acknowledge that life is better in the household of God than it is doing whatever pleases us. But this could have been a much simpler story. The son goes off, squanders everything, comes back, gets welcomed by the father. Boom. That's a simple story of God's amazing grace. Now imagine if Jesus shared this story on the internet today. He wrote it as a Facebook post or a Reddit post. Someone in the comments would have read the opening lines and written, TLDR, too long, didn't read. Tell that ungrateful son of yours he's made his bed and now he can lie in it. Sometimes you got to show tough love. And then other people would write something like, did you even read the story? And someone else would say, why do you read these stories? They're just written by AI. And then there would be all this advice and everyone would argue about it. And then someone would threaten someone else's life. And that might be what's wrong with the world right now. Or at least a symptom of it. That's what would happen if Jesus put this story on social media, but Jesus didn't tell this story online, thanks be to God, and he didn't tell a simple story. Jesus told a more complex story because he included the story of the brother who didn't do those things. He included the story of the brother who stayed home and worked the farm all along, the brother who was jealous of the treatment of the prodigal son when he returned. And the son that said, this is not fair to me. Why not me? Why didn't you ever do this for me? We do that, don't we? We see someone else succeed and we go, why not me? Why don't things like that happen to me? Or we think or whisper about all the things those people have done wrong or that we don't like about them that mean to us that they don't deserve the good that happened to them. We're really good at deciding what people deserve, aren't we? Did you hear what he did when he was away from home? Oh my goodness, let me tell you what I heard from old Maribel. Scandalous, I tell you, scandalous. And both of these reactions, either wondering, why not me? Or whispering about the person that got the good fortune, they come from the same sense of unfairness and competition. The first year I was here, a small group of women did a Bible study over at the Clonus house. I did not go to all the meetings but I stayed for the ones I went to. And one of those lessons really stayed with me. It said that every time we meet someone not meet for the first time, just come into contact with someone, we have a choice. We can connect with them, or we can compete with them. But we cannot do both. We can connect with them, or we can compete with them. Which one leads to friendship? Connection. Connection. Friendship, true Christian friendship, involves consistently making the decision when we meet someone to connect with them and not compete with them. You want somebody to be your friend? Put down your sword. Put down your shield. Put down your pride. Dampen your competitive spirit and celebrate the things that go well for them. But don't let their success do a number on your self-esteem because they're your friend. You're not in competition with them. Blessings are not like pie. Okay? It's not like my slice cuts into what's left for you because God only has so much goodness. Right? Blessings are not like pie. Someone else's big serving doesn't have any effect on what your serving is or will be. It's often later, when we have time to really think, that we realize that someone else's blessing that we thought maybe wasn't fair to us came to them out of a lot of really hard work or dedication or just out of the amazing grace of God. We have to find a way to reconcile it if we have the slightest sense of competition. And to get to that point, we usually have to give ourselves time to dive a little deeper into their circumstances or our own theology. Our immediate reaction will often be, that's not fair to me. But our second thought, which is what we're really responsible for, might be that it's wonderful or rewarding or even deserved for them to have that, but it takes us time to get to that second thought, time to really think about it, really read the text before commenting. So the brother who stayed home, the brother who did all that he was supposed to do, poor guy is immortalized in Jesus' story because he said his first thought, his initial reaction, which he spoke out loud to the servant and then to his father, this isn't fair to me. What the good thing you did for your brother, for your son, for my brother, it's not good for me. He didn't take the time to think that love isn't about deserving or that he's not the one in charge of deciding who deserves what. If the story had just given the brother some time, we might have heard him go ahead and read the text of his brother's life and his father's love before he decided what was fair and right and said it. Instead, we get his TLDR, the drive by and grab a cookie response. The immediate response to someone who hasn't yet remembered that they're in this relationship for the long haul. I love that Jesus complicates the story. I love that Jesus complicates all of his stories because the complications are the challenge. Jesus' stories are made to challenge our assumptions, the original hearer's assumptions and our assumptions. The complications show us where we need to grow. The complications are as much there for us as they were for the original hearers of the story. I think of the thousands of years Christians have read and heard this story and the millions of Christians who are already in church, you know, staying home on the farm, doing what you're supposed to be doing, who heard this story and said, you know what, that brother was someone I can understand. Because we're doing what we're supposed to do, right? We relate with the brother as he says it's not fair. But the overall message of this story is that God's love is not pie. It's not pie. A fatted calf for him does not mean there's no fatted calf for you. And by the way, who are you to tell me what to do with my fatted calves or my abundant love? Who are we? We are all at the same time the son who goes off and gets it wrong and yet always has a place with God. And at the same time, the son who stays home and does what he's supposed to do and struggles over whether to connect or compete now that his brother's home. And at the same time, the loving father who goes out and teaches the world that love is not pie. There's enough for you. There's enough for me. There's enough for all of us. We can all get a slice. The sermon idea came out of conversations I've had with Lee Ireland over the past few weeks. Lee has commented to me many times that people just don't spend time with each other like we used to. Neighbors don't know each other as well as they used to because there's so much to entertain us. We are, in my words, TLDRing a lot of our relationships and our friend situations. Now, like me, many of you have had longer talks with Lee Ireland in the last few weeks than maybe you've ever had in your life. And we need to keep up those conversations with Lee and with each other and with those we know have lived lives that were just a series of drives by and grab a cookie interactions. Some people live their whole lives like that. Everybody's just driving by them and grabbing a cookie. As a busy pastor in a church that's should have an associate but doesn't, because there are no associates. Who has associates? Where are the pastors? I don't have enough time to have all the conversations I would love to have. But together, we do have that time. Together, we do have that time. We might have to pause our entertainment or find our entertainment in the words of a friend. I challenge us today to pick someone. And don't you all pick Lee, because he will complain. Pick someone that maybe you have TLDR'd. Too long, didn't read. Maybe someone you've driven by too many times. Maybe somebody who makes really good cookies. Maybe someone you don't understand. Or someone you've always thought you would really like, but who has the time? Take the time this week and reach out to them. Send them an email, send them a text, have a conversation, start a conversation, reach out to connect and not compete. Right? How different would this story have been if the brother that stayed home had just gone out and said, "My brother, you're home," right? Reach out to connect and not compete. Reach out to know them better. Reach out to show someone you run into that not at all like pie love that God has for them and for you. Amen.